Some days the news does not scream. It whispers through the hallways in Santa Clara. An inside defender could completely change the math of the pass rush. A surprising target from inside the division starts to make more sense. Brock Purdy gets dragged back into the national respect courtroom. And Deommodore Lenoir sits in that tricky space between being underrated and being judged like a star. This script is a behind-the-scenes read, not just a headline list. It is fit, timing, and roster pressure. If you live this race with the faithful, hit that like button and subscribe, because today has way too many hidden signals to ignore. We start with a prediction that sounds like June provocation at first, but inside the building, it actually has real logic. Osa Odighizuwa leading the 49ers in sacks in 2026? Yes, I know. Nick Bosa is back. Mykel Williams is part of this equation. Romello Height arrived with a pass rush specialist profile. And even with all of that, there is a real path for Osa to become the biggest winner on this entire board. The detail too many people miss is that pass rush is not just about the biggest name on the poster. Pass rush is attention distribution. It is protection sliding one way. It is a guard looking inside half a second late because the edge threat is stressing him outside. It is the offensive coordinator deciding which problem he can survive. And if Bosa and Williams start pulling chips, slides, and constant help, Odighizuwa could spend the whole season getting the kind of one-on-one matchups an explosive defensive tackle dreams about. And that is where the backroom part gets interesting, because the 49ers move was not loud, but it was specific. Sending a third-round pick for a defensive tackle is not glamour. It does not sell jerseys on day one. But for a franchise that watched the defensive line lose power through injuries and inconsistency, that kind of acquisition says one thing: we need to rebuild fear through the middle too. The numbers give this belief real weight. In 2025, Odighizuwa led the Cowboys in total pressures with 52 and added 20 quarterback hits, according to Pro Football Focus. Per SIS Data Hub, he had 20 knockdowns, fourth in the NFL and first among all defensive tackles. Now put that inside only 388 pass rush snaps. The question is not only whether he produced. The question is what happens when the volume rises and opposing offenses cannot treat him like the only priority. The Chris Jones comparison helps explain how big this really is. Osa had fewer sacks, 3.5 to 7.0, but he had a higher hit rate and knockdown rate. He also topped Myles Garrett in those same categories. That does not automatically turn anyone into the best defender in football, but it shows real efficiency, the kind that jumps out when you separate reputation from impact per snap. That is why I like this prediction. It does not diminish Bosa. It does not ignore Williams. It actually depends on them. If the edge starts scaring people again, Odighizuwa can be the man crashing through the inside lane before everybody adjusts the plan. And for a 49ers defense that needs to feel uncomfortable again, that is exactly the kind of detail that changes Sundays before the first sack even shows up. The conversation shifts temperature here, because Colby Parkinson is not the kind of name that makes the fan base jump out of its chair from the headline alone. Maybe that is exactly why he deserves attention. Sometimes the smartest move for a contender is not chasing the player dominating the national debate. It is finding the piece that solves three small problems before they turn into one giant problem in December. The fit with the 49ers starts with one simple word: protection. Brock Purdy has already shown he can run this offense, anticipate windows, improvise when he has to, and keep the ball alive. But every quarterback gets better when the offense can change weight, formation, and safety without tipping the play. Parkinson, at 6'7" and 266 pounds, gives you that kind of body. He does not need to be George Kittle. Actually, that is the whole point of the idea. He would come in to help Kittle, not take his throne. And when you look at 2025, we are not talking about an invisible tight end. He had 43 catches, 408 yards, and 8 touchdowns with the Rams. For a complimentary player, that is serious production. Especially in a 49ers offense that can use heavy looks, 2 tight end sets, play action, disguised blocking, and big targets on third down or near the goal line. The backroom detail is in Los Angeles. The Rams have invested in the position. They have young players trying to earn space. And Parkinson could become a movable piece if the coaching staff decides to redistribute snaps or create roster flexibility. I am not treating this like the phone is ringing in Santa Clara today. It is a market read. But division rivals know division rivals. Kyle Shanahan knows exactly what that kind of body can do inside an offense that loves manipulating defenses before the snap. For San Francisco, the real question is not whether Parkinson would be a star. It is whether he would make the offense less dependent on Kittle for everything. Because Kittle is still the soul, the energy, the blocking, the receiving, the identity. But a long season collects tolls. Having another experienced, big, useful tight end in heavy packages and a dangerous red zone option could let the offense breathe differently. This is the kind of rumor that does not feel huge until you picture January. Third and short. Defense expecting run. 2 tight ends on the field. Purdy with one more big option over the middle. Suddenly, the quiet detail becomes a competitive advantage. Then we arrive at that conversation that always comes back wearing a different outfit. Brock Purdy and national respect. Notice how the backstory here is not only a ranking list, it is the way the league chooses to explain 49ers' success. When Purdy plays well, so many people rush to talk about Kyle Shanahan, the roster, the system, YAC, and structure. All of that exists, but at some point the analysis has to face the quarterback who is actually getting the ball out on time. Purdy entered 2025 hurt, dealt with a roster that also battled injuries, returned, started only 9 games, and still helped San Francisco reach 13 wins. He threw for 2,167 yards, 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and completed 69.4% of his passes. 20 touchdowns in 9 games. That number by itself should force any serious ranking to stop treating him like a footnote. But look at the movement. Before last season, Pete Prisco of CBS Sports left Purdy outside the top 100. ESPN had the 49ers quarterback only at number 96, like he was sneaking into the conversation through the back door. Now, heading into 2026, Prisco moved Purdy up to number 75. That looks like progress. And to a point, it is. But inside the quarterback hierarchy, he is still the 15th quarterback on the list. That is where the irritation starts. Purdy sits behind names like Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Drake May, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Sam Darnold. Some of those names have stronger resumes, sure. Others have louder physical tools. But the debate gets weird when production, efficiency, winning, and command of an offense seem to matter less than narrative. I am not saying Purdy has nothing to clean up. He does. Health is critical because he played only 9 games. The interceptions also need to come down because 3 straight seasons with double digits in that category give critics room to work. But honest criticism is one thing. Dropping him because the 49ers offense is well coached is another. No quarterback should be punished for functioning inside a good structure. If anything, part of the job is understanding that structure and speeding it up. What Purdy does well does not always show up in highlights. He anticipates. He identifies space before the receiver turns. He manipulates defenders with his eyes. He does not have the flashiest arm in the NFL, but he plays with courage over the middle of the field. And in a Shanahan offense, that takes more than pressing easy buttons. It takes confidence, processing, and composure. So I want to feel the faithful's temperature. Is number 75 enough respect? Or is the country still trying to put a low ceiling on a quarterback who keeps answering on the field? Because to me, Purdy does not need to be sold as the best in the league. But treating him like the 15th quarterback after what he produced in so few games feels more like people refusing to admit an old mistake than giving a clean evaluation. The final story comes from a different angle, because Deommodore Lenoir lives in that thankless place. Good enough to bother offenses, confident enough to poke rivals, but still not treated nationally like a top-tier cornerback. Maybe it is time to revisit that with a little less laziness. Lenoir is not just the guy who talks. He has 8 interceptions and 31 passes defended since entering the league as a 5th-round pick in 2021. To me, that already changes the tone of the conversation. There is a massive difference between a loud player trying to sell a character and a defender who talks because he knows he is carrying heavy responsibility in the secondary of a contender. The backroom point here is how offenses reacted to him in 2025. His allowed passer rating rose to 90.5, way higher than the previous 2 years, and that opens the door for criticism. But that number alone does not tell the whole story. He saw 63 targets, a major drop from 87 the year before. When volume falls like that, there is usually a hidden message. Quarterbacks started preferring to look somewhere else, and there is more. Lenoir had 6 games where he allowed 10 yards or fewer when targeted. Only 3 quarterbacks in the NFL did that across the entire season. That is not social media noise. That is coverage that closes windows, removes easy reads, and forces an offense to recalculate. Kyle Posey also brought up a very important next-gen stats detail. In sticky coverage, where the defender stays within 1 yard of the receiver whether he is targeted or not, Lenoir ranks 7th in the league through week 12. That is the type of stat that matches the tape. Sometimes the ball never comes because the space never opens. Now, we cannot pretend everything was clean. 10 penalties matter. 5 touchdowns allowed, the worst mark of his career, matter too. If he wants to be viewed as an elite cornerback, those plays cannot become constant background noise. But defensive context matters. With Fred Warner and Nick Bosa coming back from serious injuries, Osa Odighizuwa arriving inside, and Raheem Morris trying to reorganize the defensive identity, life for the secondary can change a lot. Cornerback does not play on an island as much as people pretend. When the front seven squeezes, the ball comes out early. When pressure arrives through the middle, the quarterback loses his base. When Warner is commanding the second level, the communication gets cleaner. And if all of that clicks, Lenoir may have the perfect platform to turn internal respect into national recognition. The question for 2026 is not whether he has personality. Nobody doubts that. The question is whether he can turn that presence into a more disciplined, cleaner, harder to argue with season. Because he has already shown CB1 talent for the 49ers, now the league has to stop treating it like a local secret. When you tie it all together, the 49ers' day did not arrive with one single bombshell. It came with 4 signals that say a lot about what kind of team San Francisco wants to be in 2026. Osa can turn divided attention into sacks. Parkinson appears as a protection and formation piece. Purdy keeps fighting a ranking that feels behind what the field already showed. And Lenoir has a chance to become a national name if he cleans up the details. Now I want you in the comments. Which one of these signals deserves the most trust from the faithful today? Hit the like button, subscribe to 49ers Express, and stay close, because quiet backroom noise can decide a season 2.